all love a good game reveal, right? Of course we do, that's why we watch State of Plays and Nintendo Directs every couple of months. Now imagine if, instead of them happening every couple of months, it was one big event that happened around June time every year. It went on for about a week, and let's say that every big company that was around at the time was all there under the same roof. Now that did exist, and it was called the Electronic Entertainment Expo, and oh my god, that sounds so nerdy. Why did we call it that? Let's just call it E3 like we always did, alright? E3 was like heaven, and up until about 4 to 5 years ago, it was a yearly event, just as I got you to imagine earlier. All the big names, all with a conference, just for revealing new games and sometimes new consoles. But now that's gone. I just want to talk about it because I literally see and hear no one talk about it these days. Alright, so before we can look into the humble beginnings of E3 and when it thrived in the 2010s and when it sadly disappeared then in the later years, I just gotta get something off my chest. I've never gone to E3, purely because I didn't have money, but also the more important point, I wasn't old enough to go.
Let me in! Let me in!
Now the only way I could have gone is if future me has a time machine and he goes back in time to go and attend these conferences, and that leads me to a bigger question of, where's my invite, man? So what were the early years of E3 like? Why are you asking me? I literally just said I've never been. Just go rub salt in the wound, why don't you? But alright, don't pull my arm, I will go ahead and I'll go look it up for you, alright? Now back in the day, you couldn't just go buy a ticket to E3, you couldn't just go buy it and attend it and watch it as a normal person. You had to be someone in the industry. And that meant you had to be a developer, a journalist, a salesperson, you get the idea. You had to be in the game or electronic industry to get into this thing. Now, when you were there, what did it look like? Well, going off this footage, you can see here there's massive advertisements everywhere, there's free demos you can play. And future me, if you're listening, this is the type of E3 I want to go to, okay? Now don't get me wrong, the demos are cool and so are the massive advertisements, especially since we don't really get either nowadays. But what was the main reason for going to E3? What was the main draw? What brought everyone in? Well, it was the main stage. And you might be wondering why, because everything out there is amazing. And it was the advertisements. This was kind of where the magic happened in a sense. This is where everyone would pile in, hundreds of thousands of people, each day it was on. They'd pile in and they'd watch a couple of people on stage reveal new consoles and new games. Obviously the games being the more common one back then and even now. But that was the magic of E3 for just about 20 odd years.
What happened?
That's a perfectly good question, and the answer is fairly simple. The age of streaming and COVID. When we entered the 2010s, streaming was on the rise and developers would upload trailers straight to YouTube. But back then it wasn't a huge deal for E3 since they had just recently allowed people to buy tickets to the event, meaning money was still flowing into their pockets quite nicely, but not just from developers, but just fans in general. Now E3 only started to really run into trouble when companies started getting fed up of paying such a high price to rent out a theatre for a couple of hours. Especially when they realised that they could just live stream it for free and probably make some money on the side from the viewership. But believe it or not, Nintendo were ahead of the curve on this with the Nintendo Direct structure, and that's only surprising if you think that they're usually the last to find out about new things, especially since they were using Windows 98 for their online services up until about a couple of years ago. You know, only a few years after everyone stopped using Windows 98, of course. But anyway, let's get back on track. What was the final nail in the coffin then? Well, it was COVID. No one could attend the event in person, so they cancelled it. And if any company wanted to reveal a game, well, they could just do a live stream themselves. E3 did say they were coming back in 2021 in a new way, which, you know, let's face it, probably would have been a live stream themselves. And what company would pay E3 to have their game show up on their live stream when for free or potentially cheap, as we mentioned earlier, they could just host their own live stream and, as again mentioned earlier, make money themselves? So why bring this up 4 to 5 years later? I mean, one answer is that I was feeling nostalgic whilst watching a recent Nintendo Direct, or the other answer is that I came up with a bunch of video ideas and let a spin wheel choose for me, so you pick whichever one you prefer. Anyway, I bring it up because game reveals these days just don't hit the same, and I fully believe that E3 being gone is a huge part of this. We never know when a reveal stream is happening anymore until it's like a few days away, and it gives very little time to get excited, and if I'm honest, some of the new replacements for E3 just really don't hit the same, and I'm looking at you, Jeff Keighley. No matter how hard you try, you won't be E3. Okay, that came off pretty negative, so I just want to clarify, I don't hate Summer Games Fest, and obviously I don't hate Jeff Keighley. I think him and his show are pretty good. But the thing for me is, tries to look and sound like E3, but there's so many ad breaks and cutting back to the stage so that Jeff and his co-host can talk, it just doesn't feel needed. It does do something that E3 didn't do as much, and it does show off more indie games, which is great, because indie games these days are saving the industry. They're so much more creative and free than what we get nowadays, but that's a conversation for another time. But the way I would describe Summer Games Fest, to me, personally, is it's like going to your favourite restaurant, you know, when you were growing up, but going back there a couple of years later. You sit down, you're in a good seat, you look at the menu, and you order your favourite dish from all those years ago, and it turns up, and it looks the same, it sounds the same, it definitely smells the same, and you're thinking, this is great. But you take that first bite, and you notice something's off about it. It tastes mostly the same, but there's these little things that stand out to you that don't quite sit right, and you realise it's because they've changed the recipe since you last came. And it's not bad, it's pretty good, but you sometimes just miss the old recipe and how it used to be. And that is how I look at Summer Games Fest. I like it, but I miss the old recipe. And same goes for Nintendo Directs. I really like a good Nintendo Direct, and I like a State of Play. Do I think they replace E3? God no, they happen more frequently and they're a lot smaller, but also they, like I said, don't give enough time for hype to truly build up. It's kind of over and done with. So I just realised I've spent the last 6 to 7 minutes telling you why I think E3 was amazing, but I've not actually told you why I personally loved it myself. And obviously it wasn't for the demos or the advertisements or the mascots, because I never got to do all of that. What I did get to do was watch the live streams, which personally showed how amazing, but also, more importantly, the reason I loved it, how unprofessional E3 could have been. Because yeah, it had the timetable of events, it had the professional camera crews and the audio teams and the journalists, interviewers, what have you. It had the scripts and the big stages, but it was still very unprofessional at times. You know, watching the live streams, you got to see the random bits.
Nah, we got a special weapon that I ain't gonna tell you about, but we got a couple of little things that we gonna rock and roll with.
The live stream mess ups, which also meant the awkward moments.
So I am here to talk about Need for Speed Payback. If you guys didn't know, Need for Speed Payback,
the shade that the other companies would throw at each other from time to time.
This is how you share your games on PS4.
Thanks.
PlayStation.
So what made E3 so important then? To me, it was the fact that it brought everyone together for 1 week every single year. You know, all the gaming news, anything gaming focus stopped, and it was all eyes on this event. All you saw were the trailers going up on YouTube, all you saw was people excited about different games being revealed. It was about the planning, what events you were going to see, and, you know, really just timing it all, getting the snacks, getting the takeaway, doing whatever you wanted to just to watch this event. But it was also about having something to look forward to every year, and I know we can expect a Nintendo Direct or a State of Play every couple of months, but I just don't think it's quite the same. It can sometimes be quite negative with all the leaks going on. I found in my memory, with E3, there weren't many leaks, at least that I can remember, correct me if I'm wrong, but I always remember going in there with some expectations, you know, we're going to see the new Call of Duty or Just Dance, what have you, but you never knew really loads about the big ones, like when Spider-Man first popped up for the first time. So that's why I personally think E3 was important, but it's different for everyone. So if you have memories of E3, or you know, you have your own reason why you think it's important, or maybe you don't think it was important, maybe you think the Directs and State of Plays are the way to go. Either way, just leave a comment. I want to see what everyone else kind of thinks of the topic and what they think of the conference as a whole. Tune in next time when I discuss why E.T. for the Atari is the greatest game of all time, and any opinions you have on it are absolutely wrong.